Okay.
So I'm just going to introduce her. Okay. Good morning. Oh my gosh, microphone. How are you guys doing? Good. Economics in the morning. You guys are brave, right? But I'm here to tell you about something that can help you out with this class. Right here I have your SI leader. Her name is Kiana. She's being trained right now, so I'm just going to introduce her and tell you guys about SI. How many of you guys are familiar with SI or supplemental instruction? Raise your hand. Wow, okay, that's good. For you, those of you who don't know, SI is basically peer facilitated study sessions. So she has already taken this class. She did really well. She's going to plan 3 50-minute study sessions to help you guys engage the material in different ways, basically help you guys prepare for the class. Those who attend SI, the stats portion, actually make a letter grade better than those who don't. You do have to attend, we see it more around 5 or more sessions, so we always encourage you guys to come early, come often. She's going to be taking the class again, taking notes with you guys, attending the class, and then once she passes out a survey, which will be next class, she's going to get all of your times that you're available, so don't put times that you wouldn't be there. Make sure that they're times that you don't have class or something going on, and she's going to try and pick 3 times that are the best for you guys. She also will have an office hour where you guys can come to her with specific questions, things of that nature. So, do you guys have any questions? No? Okay, well thank you so much for your time.
Appreciate it. All right. There was a little bit of discussion going on here before 8:30 because I came early to figure out all of this stuff. I haven't been in this room in a long time. So let me rehash a little bit of that. Making sure this is working first. Oops. All right, we are going to be working this semester through the tophat.com platform because it does allow things like that, asking questions in class, getting feedback, also allows taking attendance. So do hook yourself up to that. And make sure you do buy a textbook. Make sure you do read the first couple chapters soon. We maybe get into the second chapter today. And the most important thing of all is your perspective on being in a class. And I mean, the reason that I have this is I want you to be engaged, not just physically present. I want you to be following along, thinking, processing, because you see with all this technology, there really isn't that much need to take notes anymore. In fact, what I recommend you do, oops, let me get rid of this question. We're not going to do that today as much. Oops. What I recommend is that you download this PowerPoint from BB Learn. By the way, there's 2 versions of it. It's kind of weird. I had the one version that I've had for months to work with, and that's what I've been working with, and then poof, another set suddenly appeared there. 2 different versions, pretty much of the same thing. This version is the one that I'm going to use for a while at least, and I edit it a little bit, so that means I tinker with it to kind of get my head into it. So this might be the version that you might want to print with some lines on the side where you can take some notes. See, that way you don't have to take very many notes, but occasionally you do need to write something down that clarifies something that's in the PowerPoint, right? I mean, if there are online classes after all, and so that basically says that maybe classes aren't necessary, but we're all different, and for some of us they may be necessary, and for some of us they may be preferred, and for and benefits, etc. So what I suggest is that you do take some notes, but don't be a stenographer, and where you go, oh man, I've got to write down every word the professor says. No, don't do that. No need. Right? The PowerPoint and the chapters contain all the content. The classroom and the online forums and all of that are for clarification. And again, that's important. Engagement and clarification. Yes. Say your first name. Liz? Okay. I don't know. I'm pretty far in advance. I mean, not just minutes, days, or usually a couple days. What What may happen is I may post one, and that the one that I use in class may vary from it slightly, because one of the ways that I get my head into the lecture is to go through it, and every time I do, I discover some little thing to edit or something. So if that doesn't bother you, it'll probably be well in advance, and it isn't a big deal. In fact, as I was doing that just before class today, I discovered a typo here. So when I get to it, I'll say, cross out the word the, which I can't edit this version, so I have to wait to get my version of it later to do that. So, Liz, that's, again, a long-winded answer to pretty well in advance, but not terribly far in advance. And it may not be the very final version that I actually present in here, but the final version and the one that I upload won't differ much. And plus, it's a way to get your head into it, is to say, oh, my version doesn't contain that. My version is missing a couple of words there. You put a little arrow and you insert them. And it engraves it on your brain a little better than just reading. See, one way to totally fail in a class is to assume that you will learn anything at all just by your eyes going over words. That will just, especially with all distractions in the modern world and all the things going on, if you think you're going to retain much of anything just by eyes moving over words or over a graph or something, well, again, we're all unique. It might work for you, but it doesn't have a very high success rate. Okay, so you need your hand to be doing things, at least with your stylus, if not on an actual ancient piece of paper. Gasp, and well, whatever. Again, whatever works, but something's got to be going on typically to get your brain to retain it, other than just your eyes moving over stuff. Okay, so Liz and Jody and Danya and Danny. Where's Danny? Danny there. Okay, and Jonathan. And at some point it's going to be an act of futility, but I do appreciate the early people speaking up and kind of warming me up to the situation here. Okay, before we launch into things, any more questions or comments about perspective? You'll see some of that early on. I do appreciate that the last several rows are empty. Maybe you can even compress up a little bit more by next time. Okay, so let's see, getting used to this little doodad here. Oh, yes, oops, oh, went the wrong way. What happened here? Okay. Forgot how to get it to go to full screen. Oh, well, there it is. Nope, not what I wanted to do. Okay, anyway, there it is. And for some reason I forgot how to get this stuff off the side of the screen, but you can still see it. Okay. Oh, there. I undownloaded it, I guess. All right. All right, so it starts off with the big ideas in economics, 2 screens worth, 5 each. Again, no reason for you to madly scramble to write these down. It's right there in BB Learn for you. But again, when you have the time, you may wish to annotate what some of these things mean. Okay, so for example, incentives matter. See, is there anything about that I need to clarify? That says when there's a stronger motive or a bigger reason or more rewards to do something, more people are likely to choose to do it more often. Right? And vice versa, right? You say, duh. Then you look at government policy and think, wait a minute, these are adults. Why didn't they figure out that this would create an incentive to do X, Y, and Z? And there it is, people are doing X, Y, and Z, and it's screwing everything up. Okay, well, so it does seem pretty obvious that incentives should matter. But then again, you do look at some government policies, and it doesn't look like the final result of the sausage factory produced something in which they thought incentives would matter. You're saying, wait, why do you say sausage factory? Ask a legislator sometimes. Legislation is like sausage. You do not want to see it being made. Otto von Bismarck said that a long time ago, a famous German statesman. The political process is an ugly business. There's nothing very glamorous about it. It's pursuit of self-interest in a different form other than markets. is what it is. And so the legislators themselves widely call it the sausage factory. Okay, so some of these, there's really nothing much I can say. And I'm not going to say anything about many of them right now because this is just a list to tell you what it is we're going to go over, and then each item appears separately. Thinking on the margin. See, now if I didn't say anything about that, you have to raise your hand, because what on earth does that mean? Thinking on the margin. Well, we'll wait till we get to number 4 here in the regular list. Okay, so 6 more. There's 10 big ideas. I don't know how they ended up with exactly 10. Nice convenient number. Okay, so you see there it says some stuff about incentives mattering, rewards and penalties, indeed. And I added this last bullet here. I'll give you a chance to read the first few bullets. But economics is about rational behavior. Okay? I was confused once several semesters ago when a student kept protesting some stuff that I was saying, and I finally realized that she had not made the fundamental assumption that often goes unstated, namely that economists study rational, deliberate decision making. We leave the other stuff, the crazy stuff, to the psychologists. Okay? So we don't look at impulse buying, for example, although I suppose some people would argue that it's rational because, well, they have a very urgent need or want and got to be met now, or otherwise, the desire for it or whatever will dissipate. What we look at is deliberate, purposeful, thoughtful, really compared all the alternatives, what would he or she do kind of decision making. Okay, so within that realm, self-interest is an extremely important issue or incentive in economics. And then I added that last bullet myself. It's important to understand that self-interest doesn't just mean, more for me, more for you. For some people, that's all it means. True. For some people, as the old saying goes, their heart's locked in a safe deposit box someplace. And, the Scrooge thing, right? It's all about, counting how many of the gold coins, and it's all about more. There are people in the world who are perfectly rational, pursuing self-interest. Mother Teresa would be a good example that most people can remember. To her, self-interest was serving others. She couldn't care less about having a mansion, and a nice car and any of that. It was all about the altruism, the feeling of serving others. Then there's the soldier who jumps on the grenade, right? Dies, but saves everybody else in the foxhole. That's self-interest. Okay? At that instant, at least, it was, I'd rather die than watch everybody in here die. Okay? So self-interest isn't just about greed and hoarding and having more stuff and making more money. Not for everybody, at least. It's defined as, there's the typo, the in the second line of the last bullet. I meant to delete that before I entered it in there. Incomplete editing. Okay? Self-interest is broadly defined to include any basis for feeling better, which includes charity and self-sacrifice. Okay? Again, for some people, that's everything. For some people, it's something. And for other people, it's nothing. Okay? Tastes and preferences vary. Okay? So self-interest, being extremely important, doesn't exclude the notion of altruism and sacrifice and so on. Okay, so see, we can go over each of these, and again, as you look at some of those bullets, and I don't say anything about them, that's normal. It's going to be a normal thing, but it also needs to be a normal thing that you challenge me to say something about it if you need clarification of it. Okay, so again, kind of a duh when you just look at it on its face. Good institutions align self-interest with the social interest. Well, yeah. If an institution puts those things at odds and people pursue self-interest at the expense of the social interest, yeah, there are going to be problems. And sometimes that's unavoidable, but as much as possible, we should design our institutions through our laws and government so that we understand self-interest and try to align it as much as possible. Again, the free market typically does that. The free market mostly, not without exception, mostly aligns self-interest with social interest. That's that invisible hand thing that you may have heard about. It's that people are guided by pursuit of their own self-interest to do good for society as a whole, most of the time. The last bullet there says not all of the time. Okay, for example, there are spillovers. Okay, like if you are neglectful of taking care of your car, okay, and you're spewing pollution, getting from point A to B is causing damage to others. Okay, so that's one of the examples. Pollution is an example of where the incentives to get from point A to B as cheaply as possible may not fully align with the social interest of not dropping dead on a summer day when everybody's doing the same thing, and some vehicles are in better shape than others, and there's a lot of pollutants out there. Gag cough. We've all been behind an old clunker, right? Environmental economics is one of the things that I do, and 10% of the vehicles, the worst ones, are responsible for over half the emissions. Okay? So if you get behind one of those, yeah, somebody's incentives were not well aligned with social interest there. You try to get away from them as much as possible. Then there's also getting in the elevator with somebody who had too many beans for lunch. Right? Somebody's self-interest was not aligned with the social interest. They should not have gotten into the elevator. Or if you'd known better, you would not have gotten into the elevator. Of course, you didn't know, and things happen. Okay, so see, I say the word okay a lot. There should always be a question mark implied at the end of that, because I'm not telling, I'm asking. Something else popped into my head here a minute ago, something I wanted to say. Let's see, what else was it? Yeah, it escaped. It will pop back into my head later on. One of the big three, as I call them. A couple of my other courses are just built around this notion of big three. One of the big three is the term there in red, opportunity cost. And by the way, one of the things that's easy about studying economics is you can study yourself, right? Your own rational decisions. For example, at the start of the semester here, you probably, maybe not for sure, depending on your discipline and your habits, but you may have adjusted your alarm clock, because your schedule's different now. As you sat there with the button on the alarm clock, or whatever it is, your cell phone that you adjust, you were doing marginal analysis and thinking about opportunity cost. You were doing this trade-off thing. You were weighing different reasons to change the time one way or the other. The parking lot fills up and the traffic is bad, and all these things. That was going, you weren't probably thinking about it, but that's what was going on. Economics was going on inside your head. You were weighing all the reasons to get up earlier than whatever the status quo, whatever. See, that's the thing at the margin. Whatever your cell phone or your alarm clock was set, let's say it was set at 6:30 a.m. You're looking at, the semester's starting. Should I adjust it back to earlier than 6:30 or more? See, that's at the margin. You're deciding plus or minus a minute or 2 or 3 or 10 or 15 minutes from 6:30 whether to make adjustments. You're doing marginal analysis. You're thinking, what's the benefit of getting up 15 minutes sooner? Marginal benefit. Change in total benefits with 15 minutes of earlier start. And you're thinking of the marginal costs, marginal analysis. Wow, 15 minutes less sleep, and I'll go through the whole day dragging from that. I'll leave it at 6:30. Or no, I'm going to change it to 6:15. And then you're at 6:15 thinking, maybe 6 o'clock would be even better. Again, you're doing the marginal analysis thing. You probably, till today, you probably never heard of the term marginal analysis. But you've been doing it. Okay? So economics, you can study yourself. Think about your own rational decision making, how you do it, what you consider. Opportunity cost are all the things that you give up to change the way things are, to change the way things have been, which can include paying money for something, but it can include giving up the time to do things. Many times when you buy something, the money cost is the least of the cost of purchasing it. A bag of concrete is a good example, especially since it's a concrete example, but it's 80 pounds. See what I mean? I'm not going to make a living. I try to be funny. Okay, but it's just not going to happen in terms of me charging admission. Okay, but anyway. All right, so a bag of concrete is 80 pounds, and I'm a big person, but 80 pounds is still, a good hefty lift. Okay, so yeah, I got to pay the nearly $4 at Home Depot or somewhere to buy the thing. That's part of the opportunity cost, but that's not the whole thing. I got to pick that thing up. I got to get it in my truck. I got to get it home. I got to take it out. Meanwhile, I'm getting dust all over my clothes. See, opportunity cost is more than just money cost. And in this case, the $4, nothing. And if I could pay somebody the $4 to get it from Home Depot, on top of the $4 to buy the thing, doubling the money cost, that would be huge for me to get it to right where I'm going to use it, the bag of concrete. Even then I still got to stir the thing up, and get my hands dirty, and that stuff dries out your skin. Opportunity cost is a lot of things to get some concrete someplace, in this case. Again, a concrete example. Okay, recognizing all of those trade-offs, all the other things you could be doing with the money and time and the effort that it would take to clean your clothes and to get your hands supple again after handling some Quikrete. You may never have done it yet. Once you get your hands on it, dries your skin out. It's awful. But then again, I make a lot of stuff out of hobby time, out of concrete and granite scraps. So apparently I decided the marginal benefits exceeded the marginal opportunity costs. And by the way, I do use jargon some just to kind of do this, to see if you're A, awake, and B, playing along. Playing along means, Doc, what did you mean by, so some jargon is going to be, I never heard of that. Don't let it just, maybe you want to wait till later, and see, this is one of the reasons to read the chapter too, is I didn't read the chapter today. No one else is raising their hand. Everybody else must understand that. Oh, I should have read the chapter. See, once you read the chapter, you become more assertive. Yeah, I read the chapter, and man, I don't remember that, what he just said, or that piece of jargon. Okay, so sometimes a piece of jargon is a challenge to be assertive, play the game the way it's meant to be played, which is, with feedback, and to get things clarified when they need to be. Okay, so I think I addressed most of what's on there without reading it to you. I don't need to read it to you. You can read it to yourself, right? Okay, so conversational tone is better. I'm about to push the button after saying, okay. And that doesn't end it. I mean, it's not going anywhere. You can ask about it later. But at least for now, I'm going to move on unless somebody says, no, don't do it. Okay, so the little thing at the top, and then you see we're doing each of the items on those lists at the beginning. Okay, a whole 10 items. And we'll probably get through them before 9:45 and move on to chapter 2 a little bit, not much. Okay, so I already talked about thinking at the margin a little bit, because you see the big three, as I call them. You're saying, what are the big three? I've been doing this for 30 years, so I can anticipate some of the questions, but not all. Opportunity cost, marginal analysis, supply and demand analysis. That's what I mean when I say the big three. If you understand those after this semester, you're going to be pretty well set for the rest of your life as a non-economist, non-business person just taking this class because you think everybody, including yourself, should be economically literate, which is true. It's sad that they've taken economics out of the core curriculum, because a lot of students are now opting to go through life as in the upper one-third, about the upper one-third of people go through college. The other two-thirds don't. You're in that upper echelon. I've opted to go through life economically illiterate, sort of. I mean, everybody learns a little bit of economics through the School of Hard Knocks. You have to know some economics. Everybody has some economic theories up in their head just from experience, though they may be wrong. Sadly, that's what our elections often reflect, is believing things that are not true. That's another story. So anyway, I think I addressed a little bit of this already. Let's see, economic activity rarely involves all or nothing choices. See, that's that alarm clock thing again. You're not deciding whether to get up in the morning or not. You're deciding when to get up and how much earlier to get up than you had been getting up, or later to get up. Right? The status quo had been 6:30 and you punch the snooze button a couple times. Okay, and then you actually get up. Okay, now you're thinking, okay, the fall semester is starting. Maybe I should change that. You're thinking at the margin, plus or minus a little bit. So, another choice that you constantly make on an economic basis that you probably have never thought about, and that is how hard you push on the gas pedal. It's an economic decision. All right, you're weighing all the things like, is there a cop likely to be around here? And well, the traffic's pretty bad. And what about that person up there? They look a little bit shaky. They might change lanes right in front of me. You know, the thing's belching smoke, or they're weaving a little bit. Maybe I better slow down and back off and let them get out of here, and if they have an accident, nail someone else. You know, all those things are going through your head as you decide, you know, maybe if you knew it was a police holiday, you know, little, right? That would adjust the marginal costs a little bit of stepping on the pedal a little harder, right? Because it seemed a little less risky, right? And probably the average speed on the highway would go up. See that? All of that is thinking at the margin. You do it constantly. Study yourself. So that makes economics a lot easier to study, right? You can go through the day and just think about each of your rational decision that you made. You can also think, wait a minute, that wasn't a rational decision. I didn't assess all of the things, and that turned out pretty well anyway. Or, whoops, I should have made it a rational decision and thought about all the issues for doing X, and it would have turned out better. Okay, so I'm just looking at this to see if there's anything else based on my 30 years doing this I need to say. You should be doing the same based on your much less experience of whether you think you get this or not. See, and that's when I insert the questions later, that's part of the purpose of it, is to jerk you out of your comfort zone and say, whoops, I thought I got this. Now here's a question like the one he's going to ask on the test. I have no idea. Well, yeah, maybe you better up your level of engagement and or clarification assertiveness a little bit, right? And we're not going to do that today because most of you don't have the devices tuned up to top hat yet and all that, but Tuesday at the latest and maybe Thursday some just to get you a little more familiar with it. Yes, Jody. Yes.
Your PowerPoint online that's on Blackboard is way different from the one you're showing us.
There's two of them there.
Yeah, both of them are different though.
Huh?
I was looking at them too. They're both different from that format and that information.
Whoa, I just uploaded this one yesterday. Thought I did. Huh. Okay, I'll definitely check it out right after class and fix it. Put this one in there. Huh. Okay, maybe I put it in a different file or directory or something. Okay, thank you for that. Wow. Shocking. I'm a dinosaur in terms of all this technology, so that is a less unlikely thing for me than it would be for someone else. All right. You've heard the term denial is not just a river in Africa or Egypt or something, right? Well, denying the laws of supply and demand or ignorance of them. See, I edited this a little bit. You don't mean just minor differences, right? You mean totally different, what you mean in terms of what's up there. But see, huh?
Yeah, totally.
Totally different, okay.
Power of trade.
Oh, that's chapter 5
That's what,
or 3 or something.
what is the big idea?
The big idea is what it has for number 5, the power of trade.
Oh. Oh. Okay. All right. Weird. Okay. These are the ones that are in the first chapter, I'm pretty sure. But okay, so I will definitely address that first thing after class. Okay, so again, a denial is not just a river in Egypt or Africa. And by the way, this is true for a lot of things. I mean, there is so much denial going on. Like, yeah, I'm going to get this, no problem. And you wait till the last minute to study. I mean, you're doing the denial of the river in Africa kind of thing. You know that's not going to work, right? And it may work because you've trained enough professors to go easy on you, right? Because they want good evaluations. It may work in a class, but then 10 minutes after the course is over, you have no retention of the material that you paid money to learn. Okay, so don't do the denial thing, just like policymakers shouldn't deny the laws of supply and demand and interfere with them, because they can have serious consequences. Let me give you an example that comes right out of what some of the stuff that I do. One of the things that I do is school system reform. You may have heard of charter schools, or chartered public schools. And they are not allowed to charge tuition. So as a result, at a price of 0, right, no tuition allowed, the quantity demanded, the amount of applications for room to entry into the charter school, is not just often, but is almost always more than the quantity supplied. So there are wait lists, which means shortages, which means a lottery to get in. What are the consequences of denying the laws of supply and demand in this case, namely that if you interfere with the price mechanism and just set it at 0, that it's quite likely that the quantity demanded will be more than the quantity supplied. Well, here's one example of it. There's a place in Florida where a charter school put some of the kids in a tool shed. Found a tool shed. It's hot and humid in Florida like in Texas. But the school says, hey, we don't have enough space in our regular classroom. We're trying to find more. And hey, Ms. Parent, Mr. Parent, if you don't like it, sorry, step aside, somebody wants your slot. Economists have found generally, and this is just one example of it, the charter school example that I just gave, that when there are shortages, the quality of the good is reduced. As one way of dealing with shortage. If that is not a perverse outcome and incentive, I'm not sure what is. A shortage means there's a desire for more. And the seller is taking resources out of producing the good, right? Lower quality, cutting corners. Just exactly the opposite of what the signal is, which is to make more. Of course, the signal that always works to make more is for the price to come up. See, and again, the same thing in the charter school. Suppose that charter school was allowed to charge tuition in the face of all these people that want in. They raise tuition, right? Charge not zero, but whatever the market will bear. There's that greed thing again, right? Whatever the market will bear, right? That's saying, well, I'm going to charge whatever I can get away with. That's what the market will bear means. Okay, so let's say the charter school raises its price. And of course, some people will say, well, I don't want to pay the price, or I can't. And so the quantity demanded will go down. But the quantity supplied will go up, right? Because now they'll have more money to do things. Okay, so now there won't be any shortage and there won't be any incentive and counter incentive, right? If they start cutting corners, they're going to lose customers. They don't see with a shortage, they have surplus customers. And if you're unhappy, they say, sorry about that. So, boo-hoo, sorry about that. They have another customer to replace you. Like that. No loss to them if you're unhappy in a shortage situation. But if there's not a shortage, please don't go, please stop. No, we'll do whatever it takes to keep you. Not necessarily whatever it takes, but they'll try to keep you as a customer. Okay, so denying the laws of supply and demand can, in this example, create shortages. Shortages can reduce the quality of the good, which is a perverse result because shortage means that more is wanted, not less. And reducing the quality of the good, cutting corners, means that less is being made in effect, right? Like a candy bar gets shrunk, right? Lower quality. Or less stuff gets put in it, right? Lower quality when there's not enough of it to begin with. But see, the lower quality is a way to indirectly raise the price. So that's one of the reasons that the consequences can be bad, serious, is because people are sneaky and creative and have a way of getting around restrictions. If you tell them they can't charge more than X and there's a shortage at price X, they just won't put as much stuff in the product, right? In effect, making it more costly, cheaper to make, more costly to you. Okay, so price controls tend to be unwise because price controls create perverse incentives. And I know I haven't clarified that middle thing other than with my one example, but we'll get into that a lot this semester in an upcoming chapter. So gave you one example to give you the flavor of it. And again, I'm not asserting that it's okay. I'm asking, not telling. Interaction. Oh, I forgot to tell you, that's one of the other things that is part of that red skeleton thing. I wanted to be that when I was a little boy. The comedian, Google it, I read this red skeleton. Not skeleton, skeleton. He does an awesome Pledge of Allegiance. He'll bring you to tears with his Pledge of Allegiance, by the way. Strange, a person comedian. Anyway, one of the things that I do to clown around and break the tension is I lapse into Cajun man. Not as good as Adam Sandler by any stretch of the imagination, but interaction, anything that ends in T-I-O-N. Exaggeration. It's all, beware, it can happen, and it's normal. No need to call it. Merrifield's going nuts now. He's halfway there anyway. But hopefully not going any further. Just sort of halfway there at all times. Okay. And see, there I do the okay thing again. I'm asking, not telling. Training you, trying to train you, and with jargon occasionally, trying to train you to be assertive and demand clarification when none is offered based on having done this for 30 years and anticipation, having anticipated that there will be a need for such. Okay, wealth brings higher standards of living. Well, duh. Okay, now I added another bullet above and beyond what the publisher provided. Yeah, sure, but what if somebody else has the wealth and you don't? The distribution of wealth is darn important, both for fairness, and who knows what on earth that means. We call income earnings, right? So if somebody pays it to you without a gun on their head, you earned it, right? Voluntarily, it paid you something for something in return, and you're getting rich, and others aren't. Seems sort of fair, but a lot of people don't see some people with a lot of money, and even though it's earned fairly, not taken, not seized, as fair. So distribution issues are often the basis of controversy and strife. See, that's one of the reasons for A. See, the distribution of income can cause interfering with the laws of supply and demand. Joe's making too much money, we better tax some of it away from him. It's not fair. Joe's a billionaire, and some people are scraping around for their next meal. Not fair. Well, for example, let's not use Joe. How about Bill Gates? He earned his billions. He's made every one of us more productive with Microsoft Word and Office and all the rest of it. He's only got a couple bucks from each of us out of all of that, right? You get up to $1 billion out of 300 million people really fast. Okay? But nevertheless, he does have, one time I checked, he had $92 billion. I didn't check, it was in a news article. He may have more than that by now, less, whatever. He's giving away most of it, right? What can you do with $92 billion? You can buy anything you want and have tons left over. All right, so wealth is important. Economic growth is important. See, without economic growth, there's constant strife about how the pie is going to be divided up. The only solution, the pie, the total amount, see the jargon again there. The total amount produced is called the economic pie, sometimes GDP, gross domestic product. And of course, it's nice to make the pie bigger because that reduces the amount of strife over how we divide the pie. See, and there's that distribution issue thing again. Okay, so economic growth is not only important for its own sake, but also to keep the peace, keep people a little less antsy about who has what share of the pie, the total amount produced. And understanding how it's created is important. It's not all that complicated. If you give people a stake in their output, get them keep most of what they produce themselves, they tend to work pretty hard. On the other hand, if you regulate them and tax it away pretty readily, they won't produce much. Okay? Or if their property isn't secure, this is the problem in most of the underdeveloped and less developed countries in the world. Property is not secure, so people don't invest. Would you invest something, save for the future, if the local dictator could take it at his or her whim? Probably not. Not many people do. Well, that's the reason most of the world's people that are poor, is because of the uncertainty about their own property rights. Their inability to enforce a contract, for example. If somebody agrees with them to do something, and then they break their word, in the United States, you can enforce that and pretty reliably. In other countries, you can't. So why enter into a contract if it's meaningless? Okay? Less economic activity, less investment, less prosperity, less growth. By the way, is that number 5, is that the only one that varies from these? Or are most of these in there at least?
No, it's
No,
not even close.
it's really different.
All right. Okay, well, anyway, we'll do these for now, and I'll double check who changed what later on. All right, and these are, it's not like these won't matter or aren't important. Otherwise, they're just some other things that we'll have to get into. I remember the one on trade. That comes up in chapter 3 or something. Okay, so we already talked about the institutions a little bit just now. Why are some countries rich and others are poor? Because in some place there is an incentive to save. There is the certainty of the protection of your own property by the government, the rule of law. In other places, most of the places in the world by population, it's not certain. Much of the world is corrupt. Even more than every place has some corruption. Okay? But that's pretty much, if you wanted to graph poverty against something else and have pretty much a straight line, it'd be corruption. Okay? Because corruption undermines investment. And without investment, there's no growth. Okay? So no growth from nothing means you pretty much stay at nothing. Now, in these corrupt countries, Some people have money. I mean, they're the ones that are keeping it corrupt because they have theirs. They're in positions where they have monopolies or other ways of extorting money from the masses, but the masses stay poor. Okay, so I think I covered some of that without saying exactly those words. By the way, that's another study technique. Translation. Whoops, there I go again. Translation. Okay? You see words written either in the PowerPoint or your little annotations of the PowerPoint where you clarify things. Oh, that's what he meant. You write a little something in the margin. If you rewrite some of that later on into words that mean the same thing, that's the translation thing. That's a good way to study. That's a good way to get your brain to retain stuff, is rewrite some of the same things but in different words. Translation. Okay. I don't like the term booms and busts because busts sounds negative. There are ups and downs in the rates of economic growth. Sometimes negative, and we saw that in the Great Recession that's still sort of lingering, but 2008, 2009, when things actually did go down, that was a bust. I think those can be avoided. So maybe I'm differing with the authors here a little bit. But for sure, there are going to be ups and downs in the rate of economic growth, maybe sometimes negative. I think the negative ones are avoided. But changes in the economic rate of growth can be moderated from the ups and downs that we see now, or attempts to moderate them can make them worse. Okay? See, therein lies the trade-off in government policy is things are not perfect. Maybe we can make them better, but maybe by tampering with it, we'll make it worse. See, that's why we need to have a clear-eyed view of both of the strengths and weaknesses of the market mechanism, pursuit of self-interest, versus what the political process is really about and how well it works or doesn't work. Just as a quick quiz there, how many elected representatives that you either did vote for or could have voted for or against can you name? And out of those, how many of them can you name 3 things that they did? Whoops, how much accountability is there in that? I do this for a living, and I can't do that test all that well. Let's see, there's president, governor, right? Attorney general, city council, state senator, state representative, U.S. senator. Whoa, all those people. Did you know there's about 80 plus people here in Bexar County that you are responsible for holding accountable through your vote? Yeah, well, half of them are judges, but still, elected judges. But the other half of that is council, hospital board, water board. It's a long list. Now, realistically, how many people are going to find the time to study the positions of, I think it's going to be about 240 people. Merrifield, you just said 80. How did it turn into 240? Well, let's see. There's a primary, right? Right, where we got to pick which 2 are going to run in the general election, right? Okay, and then in the general election, right? So that's 2 candidates for each of the 80 offices, or maybe sometimes more than 2 candidates. Denial is not just a river in Egypt. Maybe we're leaning on the political process a little too hard. Maybe we're just a little bit nuts about how much political accountability is possible. I wrote a little essay once called "The Overextended Electorate." Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think most of us are not going to find the time out of bettering ourselves academically, having some fun, sleeping, eating, to find the time to study the political positions of 240 people. Probably not going to happen. How many of those? Well, what about the ones you don't study? Who are they accountable to? The political process is what I call committeeized. If you write that word down, it would come with a red thing underlined it. Not in the dictionary. What does committeeized mean? It means that each of us ignores almost all the political races except the ones that most directly affect us. So like if you're a teacher, you pay attention to the school board election. Okay? And maybe if you're a parent, you do. History shows, no, the turnouts are so low that, no, they're not paying attention. Okay? If you're on if it's the San Antonio River Board or something, it's not the exact name, River Authority. Who votes in those elections with any kind of information? The engineers that build dams. Yeah. They ignore all the other things while they focus on, I better, so-and-so better be elected, otherwise my company's going to go down the tubes because he's against building dams, and that's what we do. I better vote for Smith because he's for building dams and that's what we do. And, and so we understand who's running for those positions. That's what I mean by committeeized. So anyway, back to the booms and busts thing. I got off on a little tangent there. By the way, just the truth in labeling, that's one of my guiding principles, by the way, truth in labeling and try to make a positive difference. And truth in labeling, I'm one of those rare birds on campus that's a conservative academic. I did a survey one time, and someone did one from UT Austin some decades ago. 85 to 90% of professors are registered as Democrats. Republicans are too liberal for me. Okay, so there you have it. Okay, so my bias is out there. I'm definitely not registered as a Democrat, and I am registered as a Republican, but they're mostly too liberal for me. So I took the little quiz on the internet one time for libertarians. I'm a left-wing libertarian according to the little quiz. I got 7 of the litmus test questions right of being a libertarian, so I got a C on that 70%. So anyway, so there you know my perspective. And that's one of the reasons that I try to present both sides, I really do. But if I slip a little bit and only present my side, I am 1,000% sure that before you've finished even a couple semesters at UTSA, much less 4 years, you'll hear the other side. The liberal side, the politically liberal side. I mean, it's out there. So beware, both of me and for the others who don't come clean and say what their perspective is, what it is. And now, by the way, that is particularly important for an economics course because, you've heard the jokes about economists not agreeing on things and all of that. So, yeah, we don't all agree, and part of that is our ideological perspective, why we don't agree. By the way, one of the things that we do agree on is that shortages cause the quality of goods to be reduced. Okay, so it's the economic joke about finding economists agreeing, and it doesn't apply to everything. There are things upon which we agree. The vast majority of economists believe that raising the minimum wage will create unemployment or will increase unemployment. So that's another one that even the liberal economists said, yeah, if you make something more expensive, people will buy less of it. I'm looking up there. So, okay, let me see if there's okay, so booms and busts just means fast growth versus slow growth. And yeah, that'll be out there, but they can be increased or decreased depending on our public policies. Okay, well, here's one. My portfolio is particularly vulnerable to inflation, and the Federal Reserve, that's our central bank. Central banking, they're the ones that decide how much money will be in circulation, and to be proper, we'll do a little bit of macroeconomics for a minute. The Federal Reserve, okay, the Fed, doesn't print money. The Bureau of Printing and Engraving prints money, but the Federal Reserve distributes it. They can distribute as much as they want. By the way, if you can get a job at the Federal Reserve, your paycheck is from new money. They don't have a budget constraint. They don't have to ask Congress for money. They want to pay more, do more things. They have to put money in circulation anyway, and one of the ways they put it in circulation is by paying their employees. Say first name.
Who works there? What type of people work?
Bankers, economists, politicians, probably some. So, yeah, it's I look occasionally, work for them. Yeah, they go to nice conferences, and the buildings are always, really plush and all that. There's no budget constraint there. The central bank of any country is obliged, in most countries the economy is growing, to increase the money supply. And so there's only 2 ways for them to increase money supply, is buy things. Well, that's the only one, actually. And it's either pay people, buying things is paying people, or buying government bonds. So if they pay people more, they just don't buy as many government bonds. Okay, that's how they put money in circulation. So the reason I did this is because the Federal Reserve has been on a buying spree. They have doubled the base of the money supply in the last few years. So far, it hasn't caused any inflation. Now, there's a lag, usually, and you may have, if you're reading in the paper, the Federal Reserve has said they're going to start soaking up some of that money that they put out in the Great Recession, 2008, 2009, to keep the economy going. If they don't do it in time, the general level of prices will rise. Too much money chasing too few goods. That's the layperson definition of inflation.
My name's Lauren.
Lauren, okay.
Why isn't it restricted? At least a little bit.
What is
Like
it?
like how they pay their.
It's, I've never heard of any de facto restrictions. It's probably limited by public opinion, appearances. But within that, there's a fair amount of slack in saying, well, this is a premium person, with highly qualified, and they get premium people, right? Because they can offer anything that they want. They don't have a budget per se. And then see that the reason for that is because it's been determined that central bank independence is an important part of not having inflation. Once the central bank becomes a direct political arm of the government, countries have had a way of printing money rather than raising taxes to try to do more things. And then there's inflation. So if we make the central bank independent, as we did in 1913 with the Federal Reserve Act, which part of independence is not having to beg Congress for a budget, how do they pay their bills? Oh, we let them use the money that they have to distribute to do that. So, yeah, they can't pay, just billions or hundreds of millions to somebody. But the salary offers that I've seen are very attractive, and I haven't seen very many people quit their jobs at the Federal Reserve once they get one. Finding a better offer, right? It's probably not going to happen. All right, so what is inflation? It's a general increase in the level of prices. So here's one of the conundrums of economics. We don't want price control. Remember that from a few slides ago? We don't want prices to be frozen or fixed or set. We want them to be free to fluctuate because, see, that's the central mechanism of a free enterprise economy. Okay, is the prices fluctuate. What do they do in the short run? To avoid shortages and surpluses, to keep markets in balance so that everything that's produced is actually sold. That's the short run function. And in the long run, to provide information and incentives. We desperately need both of those functions to work, so we need the prices to be free to rise and fall. But we don't want the general level of prices to change. Okay, so what does that mean? It means that when some prices rise, others need to fall, and we can't govern it per se, because it's the governing mechanism. Okay, so we just need to make sure we don't print too much money so that the general level doesn't rise. So that as supply and demand changes and tastes and preferences change, that some prices rise and others fall. Too much money chasing too few goods leads to inflation. We want flexible prices, but we don't want the general level of prices to change very much. Inflation of a percentage point or two is probably better than zero, but not much more than that. I didn't get your first name, I don't think, with the strawberries.
Oh, my name is Missy.
Missy, okay. And
Lauren.
okay. It's getting on overload here. What's your first name? Eliud?
Yes.
Okay.
Does inflation make the value of the money go down?
Yeah, any given dollar buys less. That's what inflation means, and that's because there are more dollars. So if the Fed, through the Bureau of Printing and Engraving, orders up a bunch of money to be printed and goes out and buys bonds with it or gives everybody a raise at the Fed, there's more money in circulation and not any more goods to buy with it, and so there's a bidding war to drive up the price of goods. So far, what seems to be happening is what economists call, and this is not part of this course, it's called a liquidity trap, which means the banks are piling up reserves that they're afraid to lend because of government regulation and because of possible default because the economy's weak. And so they're piling up reserves. Once they start lending that money, the money supply will increase, and that will happen. The Federal Reserve says that they are going to start soaking up. How do they soak up money? By selling things, right? So if they buy bonds from the Treasury, if they take the ones they bought and sell them, see, money comes out of the economy into the Federal Reserve vault where it's no longer in circulation. Okay, so there's less money out there. So they're pledged to at least grow the money supply slower, starting in a couple months. They've been kind of shaky on exactly when, and hopefully in time to prevent inflation. Milton Friedman, if you've never heard of him, is a major monetary money supply economist kind of guru, said there's about a 2 to 3 year lag time between when the money supply goes up in normal conditions, and this hasn't been normal 2 to 3 year lag between when the money supplies goes up and the price level goes up to match. So it takes 2 to 3 years for a 10% increase in the money supply to yield an approximate 10% increase in the general level of prices. It's taken more than that in the last few years, probably because of that liquidity trap, which means banks have not been lending all of the money that they have available to lend.
Omar, I was going to ask, I thought that the value of the dollar was also backed up by the monetary government, like things.
Yeah, there used to be a gold standard, but and you know we have Fort Knox and the New York Federal Reserve has a bunch of gold stored, but you can't redeem your dollars in gold anymore. I mean, once upon a time you could present a greenback and say, you know, this much gold for it. No, it's called fiat money, and we're not talking Italian cars. The money has value because of government fiat or decree, not because of gold backing. That ended in the 70s, the formal backing by gold. Okay, what was your first name? Omar. Okay, thank you, Omar. You're just doing your hair, no question. Okay. All right. Oh, I'm sorry. Tyler.
Why does inflation really matter if it's based off how the government says the value is worth versus?
No, the government doesn't say the value of it. It just says, thou shalt accept this piece of paper for all business, public and private. It says that on the dollar bill, public.
But if the value, if you have a $5 bill, it's surface, not giving you $5, why does it matter if it's actually worth $4 versus an actual $5?
It's $5 is going to be worth $5, but what you get for $5 is going to get smaller and smaller for inflation.
Does it matter if you print more money?
Okay, let me explore that a little bit. The average level of prices means that the average level of wages is going up to match the average. Is that what you're getting at?
Yes, if you keep minimum wage at 7.25 inside the nation, why would increasing how much you print it affect the economy if it's still not giving you $1, you still have $1? Why does that affect how much prices go up and down if the value is still the same?
Well, the value is how much you can buy with it, and the more dollars there are in circulation, the more prices of things will be bid up, and therefore you'll get less for that piece of paper with George Washington's face on it. But what I think you're getting at is, hey, if everything goes up 10%, who cares? Is that what you're getting at? Okay, and the answer is because because inflation isn't uniform. In other words, when the average level of prices rises by 10%, say, some things went up 15% and some things went up 5%. Okay, and so there's a redistribution of income that's accidental that we don't like. Plus, the main reason that inflation is bad in the short run, especially when it's high, is the uncertainty that it creates about what prices are going to be in the future. But there's that redistribution of income from things where prices went up a lot to where they went up a little less than average. That's also a big reason that we hate inflation. But the reason that it wreaks havoc with economic growth in the long run is the uncertainty that it creates and the investment that it stifles. But it's true, if every price went up by the same amount, you wouldn't lose ground, right? Everything would go up 10%, your wage would be higher 10%, you can buy the same amount of stuff. And quite often, COLA is about that, not the kind you drink, cost of living adjustment. People demand, if there's inflation, to have their wage adjusted according to a change in the cost of living, which the government monitors. And if everybody's wage goes up by the same amount, then other than the uncertainty effect and the frenzy effect and other things, just a cute picture here of the little boy in Nigeria or something, Zimbabwe, carrying $1 billion or something of their dollars to buy a loaf of bread because the government's printing money like crazy. So just to buy a loaf of bread, he's got to go down to the store. He's got a big grin on his face, I guess, because he's a billionaire. So I don't know. He's got this big wad of money, and it's the inflation rate there is like thousands of % per hour or something. It's unbelievable. And so tomorrow it'll be a bushel basket of dollars to buy Zimbabwean dollars to buy the loaf of bread. So hyperinflation is just total chaos. Money ceases to be accepted for anything. But moderate rates of inflation, it depends on how uniform it is, how much difference there is between the things that are going up faster and slower. We still need to talk because I still think we're sort of, but let's move on for now. What's your first name? Jack.
Relatively higher than normal inflation right now, necessarily a bad thing since the government is spending so much more money than it's taking in. And will that lower the overall burden of that to the GDP ratio?
You're saying because the government spending is high now that inflation wouldn't be so bad?
Yeah, because wouldn't that just lower the overall?
Yeah, the Germans did that in the 1920s is they inflated their way out of their debt. In other words, they just printed a bunch of money and said, here, you're paid off. And of course,
I mean, not like hyperinflation, but 10%.
okay, we'll have to explore that theory later because I'm not following how the 10% is better than we're having about the 2% inflation right now. How does that help against the spending? In a short soundbite. Okay, send me that article. I'll comment on it next time because I don't want to say, I'm glad you asked that question, next question, but I'm not catching where you're coming from. Let me read that article to you. Can you find it? Okay, cool. All right, so let's, okay, sustained increase in the money supply. And as I think I've been getting into now, yeah, central banking is a hard job because especially if it's a political arm of the government and not independent like ours, because there's constant pressure on the government to produce more things. People want lots of things when they're free, right? Right? When it's prepaid through their taxes, they think. They want lots of it because it's free at the margin, right? No additional cost beyond taxes that you've already paid and you have to pay. So the central bank may be under constant pressure to make up, to produce additional money for the government to spend now. That's called seigniorage, by the way. The difference between the penny that it costs to make a $20 bill and that you can spend it for $20 worth of stuff is called seigniorage. I'm not going to be on the first test, but just in case you ever see the term, seigniorage is a lot, right? And it's like the cost of a glass of tea versus what it costs to make a glass of tea for you, right? About a penny's worth of tea and you pay $2 for it. Well, a $20 bill only takes about a penny or two or three to manufacture, right, en masse. And the government, of course, spends the penny to manufacture the bills and then spend them for face value. Okay, so there's a lot of temptation to use the seigniorage to pay the bills rather than taxes, which people hate. Right? I'm going to be taxed, but I want the services. You know, I don't want to pay for them. Don't tax me. More services, please. Well, so central banking is hard to fight that temptation to use the seigniorage as a substitute for taxes to pay the government's bills. And then there's the ups and downs of the economy that our Federal Reserve and other central banks are supposed to moderate, and sometimes they do and sometimes they don't. I'll tell you, when they first did that thing in 08 and 09, thank goodness I wasn't in charge because I thought, no, don't do that. And they may have saved off the Great Depression, you know, because I thought printing all this money would cause inflation. Well, it hasn't caused it yet. So maybe they did the right thing. Maybe they hope so. Give them credit for now, and having possibly staved off the second Great Depression back in 08 and 09 when things were going to somewhere in a handbasket. Okay. So you see there my motto at the end. And find a way to live by it, because it really is true. The fun never ends unless you let it. Even in here, right? Because seeing the world clear, which economics helps you do, is fun, right? I mean, it's no fun to be constantly in a fog. Why did they do that? Whoa, what's going on there? Now, we're not going to solve all of those problems this semester. We haven't solved them ourselves, you know, among ourselves. But a lot of the things that may have been a fog, you know, like, oh, okay, well, now I see why that was self-interest by so-and-so, and yeah, that's why they did that. Okay, so, you know, teach us how to make the world a better place. But again, the last one is the only one that I need to clarify there. So from 8:30 to 9:45, and whenever you're working on the material for this class, we're talking serious academics, but with a sense of humor. That's what the fun never ends unless you let it mean. So don't let it, right? You can decide to make almost anything fun. I mean, yeah, sometimes you can't help but let it. As I was getting on 1604 off of 10 today, somebody had a wreck there, and I'm sure that made the fun end. And not right when I did. It was the police was already there and everything, but yeah, that fun ends when that happens. But But most of the time, you can decide that things are fun, and serious academics with a sense of humor beats any alternative. All right, now I'm not going to go over this. I'm just going to let you know that the PowerPoint that I thought I uploaded was this one, including this thing. Is this at the end of it? So that you have a chance to, it leads you through step by step.
But I already did the top.
It's just, there are actually 27, like,
Oh, okay, yeah, that's the other one. Yeah, there's two versions.
okay, then
This,
the one we have right.
yeah, there's,
And I downloaded the other one, and it
Yeah.
doesn't like that one either.
But like, if
anyway.
get the,
I will attend to it right after class. Let's jump, we have 8 minutes left. Let's jump into chapter 2, just a smidgen, just to kind of give you a flavor of it. That you know that once I straighten this out, and thought I had, that this top hat thing will lead you step by step through how to get into that. And let's see over here. Okay. Hopefully this is, well, this one I haven't uploaded yet, but I will. I wasn't sure I'd get to it today. Oh. Okay, so. Okay, so another one that looks the same at the beginning. Again, I haven't downloaded this one yet. I haven't put this one on BB Learn yet. So we'll just jump into it a little bit because I want to get you guys and gals into some of the technical stuff. Okay, so what do I mean by that? Don't want you to enter that in without any. All right, so one of the big three, the supply and demand model. Right, first one for the beginning of chapter 2. Okay, suppliers, typically businesses, although not in the labor market. The suppliers in the labor market are us and the demanders of the businesses, but most of the time the suppliers are the businesses and the demanders of the households. And so it's a simple presentation of exchange. Right, and that's what the economy is all about. Is we specialize in something and we trade what we do for money, and then we trade the money to somebody else for what they specialize in. So demand represents the behavior of the buyers, and the demand curve is a function that shows the quantity, the amount people want to buy, quantity demanded, the amount people want to buy at different prices, willing and able to purchase. Right? Want to purchase, that's different than willing and able. You know, we all like to have a lot more of some things, and we're either not willing because of the opportunity cost, can't buy as much of other things, or able, simply just their money isn't there. Okay, and as common sense dictates, when things get more expensive, we don't want to buy as much of it. Okay, so that means there's an inverse relationship. An inverse relationship means if you graph it on a line, on a graph, it's a downward sloping line. More of the one means less of the other one. Okay, so when price rises, yeah, all else the same, we buy less, and vice versa. Okay, downward sloping, and here's what I wanted to get to. For concreteness, I guess in this case slipperiness, we prefer concreteness, the authors of the textbook have preferred to do things in terms of oil. And we're in Texas, we should be able to relate to that, right? Okay, so one thing that we want to do here, see if I had my tablet here, I'd circle that MBD. What is that? See, that's something you should not do, is have an abbreviation that's undefined. I think it means millions of barrels per day. But see, that's a hint. Their mistake is something you should learn from. The first step in one of these graphs, and see, I haven't got the graph's not there yet. Next button puts that up there. The first step in every graph is to define exactly what's going on the x-axis and the y-axis and how the two are related and whether it makes common sense or whether it's So for example, let me just draw something here before we get to it. Let's say we have this quantity, like millions of barrels per day, price per unit, and somebody like John Merrifield draws graph up there and says, there's the supply of whatever. Okay, let's make sure we finish good X. Right? We don't want anybody to get in. Wait a minute, that's not true of something real. Good X, whatever. Oil, concrete, something. Okay, so what does that line say? Does it make sense? Well, it says that more is offered for sale at a higher price per unit. That makes sense. Now, by the way, that's something to not confuse with the fact that when you buy a bigger box, the price per unit's lower. That's not the same thing. That doesn't contradict that. Okay? The supply here is the total amount supplied to the entire market. Right? And the higher that's going to be, the higher the opportunity cost. And so the higher the price has to be to pull that off. That's true in the short run. Right? In the long run, if additional firms enter, okay, well then more can be made available at the same price. But in the short run, we're going to have to take resources from doing other things and do more things with existing resources, which means more stress and overtime and all that. So the higher price per unit does make sense. Quantity supplied will increase the higher the price per unit. But what is it about that graph that doesn't make sense? That you would reject if you looked at it and said, I'm doing my due diligence with a graph. That's why I want to do this for period ends. You must do your due diligence with every graph, otherwise you're just going to memorize, if you do, which I don't recommend, something that you don't understand, some little stick figure where lines are crossing and, oh yeah, when they intersect, this happens. No. Don't do that. Okay, what is it about that graph? X is a good. What is it about that graph that, not going to happen in the real world?
Swiggles at the top.
No, that's not a swiggle, that's an S. S for supply. Glad you said that. Okay, another hint about the due diligence. Always start on the left and move to the right. Okay, so if it's a supply line, up. If it's a demand line, start at the top, go down, left to right.
Starts with an L.
Lauren.
Yes. Is it there's no price for a lower quantity than where the graph starts?
Yes. But translate that. That didn't come out.
Where the graph starts.
What does it say in non-jargonistic terms that does not make sense?
When the quantity starts.
No jargon. You're talking to somebody outside in the hallway. No jargon. You're right. This is the point that you would reject. Say, no, I don't believe this. This does not make sense for most things. I'll demonstrate in my final minute here for one thing that it does make sense. But for the vast majority of things, this, because this says, no, because this isn't demand. This is supply. Some will be made available even at a price of zero. Do you believe that? That's what this says. Right? This is more than zero, right? The origin is over here. This is more than zero, right? I don't have any numbers there, but let's say it's 10. Put some numbers on there. This says 10 million barrels per day will be offered even at a zero price. Not going to happen. Okay? So the vast majority of supply lines should look like this. Right? It will take a minimum price before any is available for sale. Right? That does make sense. Now, in my closing minute, here's an example of this. Let me demonstrate. Not indoors, but outdoors. What will be available to me and you too for free at no cost, occasionally at least, at a price of zero? Water. Yeah, if you walk around like this outside, every once in a while you get a free drink. Right? Price is zero. Now, this is also true, the rest of it, right? If we want more than this little bit occasionally, sometimes a lot, right? Flood. It's going to take pipes and pumps and reservoirs, right, to have more. There you go. Make the line reflect the reality that it's supposed to describe. Most of the time it's this, occasionally, rare cases, it's that. See you next time. Read chapter 1 and 2, and I'm going to go right up and figure out what I did or didn't download or upload or whatever. Howdy.
Hey, Billy Nelson. Billy Nelson?
Billy?
Nice to meet you.
Glad to meet you, Billy. Appreciate it.
What I'm trying to say is that,